It is estimated that the poaching wars in Africa during the late 70s and 80s killed off more than 60% of the African elephant herds. With an international ban on ivory trade in existence since 1989, the herds have stabilised, with some countries even facing overpopulation. But a recent ivory bust in Singapore raises questions about the security of some of the African herds. Earth Report investigates.
Ivory is essentially an incisor tooth that has evolved into a tusk.
Man has carved ivory into beautiful objects and traded it since the Stone Age.
The drive for ivory just seems to be the fact that it comes from a very majestic animal.
So majestic, and hard not to miss in fact, that the ivory poaching wars in Africa during the 70s and 80s killed many of them off.
Elephants went from 1.3 million to 600,000 elephants in 10 years. That loss of 700,000 elephants just surprised the world.
In 1989, Kenya burned 12 tons of elephant tusks in a dramatic protest to persuade the world to halt the ivory trade. Some say it was a publicity stunt. But later that year, 115 countries voted in favour of an international ban on the trade of ivory. Along with the ban came strong international support for wildlife law enforcement.
To address the issue of runaway poaching, which was decimating wildlife, a crack unit was recruited and trained. We weakened the strong networks that had gained root over time in Kenya. So it became more expensive to get involved in wildlife, trafficking, and really went down. Between 1990 and 1996 to really be in control of our national parks, and that system is still in place.
After the ivory ban went into effect, African elephant populations seemed to stabilise, with some countries even reporting overpopulation of herds. But the illegal ivory trade is still with us and takes its toll on more than just elephants. In the past year, 3 Kenyan wildlife rangers and 4 poachers were killed in a shootout in the Tana River district.
The manhunt for the poachers is still on. There were 7, we killed 4. What happens is that during the rainy season, there is usually poaching activity goes up. So this is a cyclic thing. They come usually at these times.
There's more. The past 6 years have seen a steady increase in the tonnage of ivory being seized in cargo containers in different parts of the world. The first inkling there was a major problem was a container seized in Singapore back in 2002 in a case that is still ongoing. The story began in Lusaka, the capital of Zambia.
The information that I had received was that there were some Chinese in Malawi who were running around collecting ivory from Eastern Province, taking the ivory to Malawi. So I supported the investigations by the officers on the ground.
Okay. What we do is we collect data, put it together. This is a local matrix for the network of ivory collection and the connecting syndicate.
Painstaking undercover work revealed an elaborate poaching syndicate.
We picked up some documents which show the weights and the values of the ivory which had passed through those offices. There was evidence of ivory having changed hands on 28th March 1994, 14th September 1996.
The data suggested the syndicate had been killing Zambian elephants for at least the past 8 years. They smuggled their tusks across the border into neighbouring Malawi. Hidden workshops would partially carve and package the ivory for shipment to the Far East. Coordinating their efforts, Malawian and Zambian wildlife authorities raided one such illegal workshop in 2002.
When this syndicate issue came about, we decided to go and check on him. When we went there, we found quite a number of tusks. They had a room where they were fashioning the ivory, and most probably where they were loading the consignments that they were exporting abroad. And that's when we thought, no, this guy is no good. We should arrest him and confiscate all that he has in terms of all these ivory pieces. It should have been from close to 10 or 20 elephants, just this lot here.
The ivory waste materials suggested this facility was punching out personal signature stamps, hankos as they are known in Japan. They were then shipped overseas. Because of the potential involvement of an international crime syndicate, the Zambian authorities asked the Nairobi-based Lusaka Agreement Taskforce to further assist in the investigation.
The Lusaka Agreement Taskforce is an operational arm of the Lusaka Agreement, and the agreement is all about cooperation in fighting wildlife crime and in particular illegal trade in wild fauna and flora.
An undercover task force agent went to Ilongwe. There he hooked up with counterparts from Zambia and Malawi. The first thing the team did was look into shipping companies.
We went to Manica, Malawi, a freight forwarding company. They showed us documents concerning a container which had been exported a month before. When we closely examined the documentation, we realized there were so many anomalies. We really reached the conclusion that what was exported was not soft stone sculptures as indicated. It was loaded on a truck, went by road through the border post of Mwanza in Malawi to the port of Beira in Mozambique, and there it was loaded on a smaller vessel called Umfolozi, and from there it went to the port of Durban. It was loaded onto a much bigger vessel, the Mall Independence.
To their surprise, the team learned the ship was to dock in Singapore the very next day.
That one almost threw us into panic because Singapore is very far, and we thought if it reaches there, it could easily disappear. I immediately telephoned the acting director of Lusaka Agreement Task Force, telling him of our findings and requesting him to send the message urgently to the Singapore authorities to look for this container.
That container ultimately was intercepted and it was found to have 6.5 tons of ivory.
But where did the ivory come from? Where were the elephants killed? The container full of ivory was released to the Lusaka Agreement Taskforce and sent from Singapore to Kenya for forensic analysis.
My impression when the container was opened was that the people who were exporting this ivory were highly experienced. The packing was done very, very, very well. They were not learners. When you imagine also the animals that were killed to get that number of elephants, it's really shocking.
Packed into 6 wooden crates were 532 tusks and over 41,000 blank hankos, destined for Japan. Scientists from the Sokoine University of Agriculture in Tanzania took samples of the ivory to discover where the elephants had been killed. The scientists and the investigators turned for help to the University of Washington in Seattle and a new DNA forensic technique.
These are the hankos that were seized in the Singapore seizure. DNA in the elephant provides essentially a signature of who the elephant is, and it also provides a signature of where the elephant actually came from. For both the tusks and the hankos, one of the critical questions was, did this all come from one place or did it come from multiple locations across Africa? And initially, almost everyone thought that it came from multiple locations across Africa.
The first step in the DNA extraction process is to take a sample and pulverize it.
People in the past, when they were trying to pulverize the ivory, they would often heat it up using saws or drills or what have you, and taking the powder, it would heat up and degrade the DNA. And what this does is it keeps the DNA at about minus 200 degrees Celsius.
Liquid nitrogen is used to cool the sample down.
So that's the real important breakthrough of this whole method, is that it allows us to pulverize it into a fine powder without degrading the DNA, which is the key. Now we can use a standard tissue extraction kit for DNA, and because it's been processed so thoroughly. Once we extract the DNA and get pure DNA, the next step is to amplify the DNA from the product.
The end result, a genotype, is determined for the ivory sample. But that doesn't get you very far. To be able to assign ivory to a geographical origin, the whole point of this analysis, you have to be able to compare it to something.
We have to create essentially a geographic reference map of elephant gene frequencies across the whole continent of Africa, wherever elephants range.